Welcome back to CV Talks, the podcast where we skip the buzzwords and get into what's actually happening on the ground in the Indian CV and road transport industry. I'm Rohit Dewan, the Portfolio Director at Commercial Vehicle Forum, or as we are more popularly known, CVF. And we are counting down to the 10th edition of our event, which is to take place on 10th of June at the Conrad in Pune. And today's topic is something I hear about constantly. Every logistics company you keep hearing is investing in technology, platforms, AI, telematics, dash cam, you name it. But somehow, a lot of it just doesn't stick. And why is that? So, to get an honest and unfiltered answer, I am joined by Nikita Garodia, Chief Operating Officer at Anva Logistics. Nikita has a fascinating background. She's come from global finance and strategy, and then made a deliberate move into the world of logistics. She's now deep into the trenches of making actually work on the ground. Nikita, really glad that you're here. Welcome to CV Talks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rohit. And thank you very much for having me. It's really my honor and pleasure to be here at CV Talks and really excited and looking forward to CVF as well. So thank you for having me here.
That's fantastic. Thanks for taking out the time. And in terms of the first question, I think we spoke about this a little bit in the intro as well. So we'll kind of start with your background. From finance and strategy. Working in derivatives to the CEO of a logistics company. That's not the most obvious path. So what pulled you in?
So, I mean, very true. It's definitely, not the most obvious path. And if we've had this conversation maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and I would have never predicted this for myself that I would be sitting here and talking about logistics and diesel and trucks. So I think, life has a way of working itself out. Because, unlike a lot of people who grow up in family businesses, I was never sort of groomed to, take over. I really wanted to carve out my own identity. And I knew that if and when I did join Anva Logistics, our business, it would be because I bring the right skills and capabilities to take it forward, and not just because, I'm the one who has the easiest access to the role. So my journey actually started in a very different world. I moved to the US when I was 17, and then I completed my undergraduate degree in business and cinematic arts from the University of Southern California, USC, in Los Angeles. And after graduating from there, I worked with a premier consulting firm in LA for a few years. Then I was fortunate to get into the Masters in Finance program at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, so which is ranked third globally. And after completing masters, I actually joined the global markets team at BNP Paribas in New York as a cross asset trader on Wall Street. So it's really been a very zigzag path. And I think that this world really trained me in a certain way. I think it taught me to look at patterns, to understand risk, to think in terms of systems, and to see how small inefficiencies can kind of add up and become large very quickly. So, but what ended up really bringing me back to India was very personal. So, in 2020, my mother was diagnosed with cancer, and that was a very difficult time for all of us. So, I took a sabbatical and, came home to be with my family. And while she was going through treatment, actually, interestingly, that's when I really started getting exposed to logistics. Because I would see my dad, keep our business running through the national lockdown that was going on that time. And this was really my first kind of insight and exposure to this world because, unlike a lot of other people from family business backgrounds, I never ended up going to my father's office or having these dinner table conversations with him. So this is when I really realized, just how critical logistics is because our trucks were moving food, they were moving hygiene products, medicines, so many essentials across, so many pin codes and towns and villages at a time when there was a major crisis going on. So I think that's when I really understood, how resilient our supply chains are. And after my mother recovered, again, I was very tempted to get into logistics, but I thought, let me, try something different. So I joined the founding team at Deserve, which is a wealth management startup. And again, doing very well right now. So there again, building something from the ground up, that was also an education that really is now helping me at Anva because there I was building systems, I was leading customer experience, and then eventually I became the head of customer success there. And at the same time, while I was working at Deserve, I started kind of helping my dad with some smaller projects at Anva around, tech and digitization. And I actually really started enjoying it. So eventually I thought, it's difficult to kind of juggle both. So I'll take some time off to, focus on Anva full time. And then 3 months in, I knew there was no looking back. So, coming into Anva was like very different for me because the background that I come from is very different compared to what you might see with a traditional, transporter or traditional logistics provider. And Anva is not a new age company that I was used to working for, which has dashboards and pitch decks and systems.
Sure.
It's a 29-year-old family run legacy logistics business, that was really built the hard way up, truck by truck, like warehouse by warehouse, relationship by relationship. So I think that also kind of pulled me in. And, hard to admit, but at first I really did come with this outsider mindset. I thought, okay, I've studied finance, I've studied systems. I've worked in New York, I've worked in startups. So let me bring a lot of systems and dashboards and
Sure.
structure. And of course, all of that I think is important, but logistics can be very humbling. So I think in this industry, I've realized now you can't really solve anything from an Excel sheet. You have to really understand, the operations of it. And that was a big learning curve for me because I had always thought, strategy is superior to operations. But
Mm.
in logistics, I feel, strategy has to sit inside operations. You have to understand the entire ecosystem, the loading point, the unloading point, the driver's behavior, the customer's pressure. And this is what really fascinated me about the industry because it's not just a family legacy, it's just how complex and intricate the whole ecosystem is. A lot of times people say, oh, this is just a simple, transport business. Like you can just buy trucks and place them, you get a driver, what is there to do in this? But
Yeah.
it's actually a very live operating system. So unlike many industries, where you can actually pause when something breaks down and then fix it and then restart, you can't do that in logistics. The trucks have to move. The customer needs service instantly. So this challenge also, I think, kind of excited me. And then I think lastly, so people side, because I came from this background where I was working in very high performance environments. And I was very used to this bookish intelligence, that looks very good on paper. But I think logistics showed me a very different kind of intelligence. Like, I have seen some of our branch managers who are not very well educated, who don't use a lot of fancy words, but they know in 10 minutes they solve a crisis. There are drivers we have who will understand and explain you a route risk better than any sort of AI software or map can do. Warehouse teams are working under so much pressure, in extreme weather conditions, like we were talking about, but with incredible discipline. So it really gave me a lot of respect for the ground because, I came from a world that really believes in, structure and data and systems. But I think in logistics, technology only works when you respect the ground, right? So I think my role at Anva today is not just to bring technology into the business, but how do I bring the right technology in the right way, at the right place with the right adoption? So, very long answer to your question, but I think in a way my career has kind of come full circle, I would say, because in a very unexpected way, like finance taught me discipline, trading taught me how to make decisions under pressure, leading customer experience taught me how to be empathy for the user. And then logistics has really taught me kind of humility and ground intelligence, right? Because here, you cannot sit and hide behind theory and jargon. Either your truck is moving or it's not, either your process is working or it's not. So I think yes, it's not the most obvious path, but now that I'm here, I think it really truly feels like one of the most real and meaningful paths that I could have taken.
So that's quite the transition from Excel, PowerPoint, spreadsheets to the world of logistics. Thanks for taking us through that. And now I'll move on to the next question. So from what I understand, from my research and what I've just heard you talk, that your Anva Logistics is built on a operational asset heavy model.
Yeah.
So be it transportation, infrastructure, the full stack, right? Now, so from where do you so from so where you sit, you know what do most tech companies fundamentally get wrong about how Indian logistics actually works? Because from a there seems to be a big gap between from a technology perspective, what is being sold and what is being used is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's an excellent question. And I think, the biggest mistake that kind of many tech companies I feel that they make is that they design for this ideal and kind of utopian version of logistics, right? Not like the real and raw version. Because on an Excel sheet, and I learned this the hard way, sit on an Excel sheet and logistics will look very clean. But as I got more experience and sitting with my father, and he has this one statement he always says, that trucks are running on the road, they are not running on spreadsheets. So I think it's very important for any tech to address that. And I say this as someone, who genuinely believes in technology. As I said, my instinct is to always look for structure. But I realize, the question cannot be how good is this technology or what can this technology do? The real question is, will the person on the ground actually use it on a bad day when things are going wrong? And I think that's where the kind of gap is there because a lot of the tech in logistics, when it's actually being pitched and sold to the CEOs, the CXOs, the MDs, but the people who are actually using it are, the traffic executives, the branch managers, the drivers, the loaders, the warehouse team. So unless we understand, their pressure, their incentives, what is their way of working, their language, their daily chaos that they're operating in, the adoption will not work. So, we've had this, where I've sat and made beautiful dashboards and they've looked great in presentations. But then I've spoken to the person who was entering the data and he felt, okay, this is just taking so much of my time and it's just making me extra work. So the dashboard is already dead because, then the stale data is being input into it. So there can be a, wonderful TMS that has like 50 features maybe, but if your branch team feels that, they need only 5 features and they're finding that the other 45 are actually confusing them, they will just go back to their comfort zone of, WhatsApp and Excel and phone calls. Similar with a tracking solution, right? You may have a tracking solution that's promising you excellent visibility. But if the driver, feels that it's too controlling or if it's draining his app battery, then he will find a way around it. And, with the drivers, there's not much that you'll be able to do. So I think the first thing that a lot of tech companies get wrong is that they underestimate this behavior change. They focus on the tech and they think, okay, implementation means you get it installed and it's done. But I have realized that, implementation means adoption. And adoption, especially in our industry, because we are dealing with so many different kinds of people with different education backgrounds and different kind of tech savviness, it requires a lot of, hand holding, a lot of patience, repetition, and training. The second thing I've seen a lot of tech companies do is, they will assume that logistics in India is one market, because we operate in a lot of different segments. So primary transport is different from secondary, warehousing is very different from line haul. So even within, the same company, like two branches can operate very differently. So I've had tech companies who come up to me and said, okay, this is a one fit solution. This is a standardized solution. You can apply it to all your branches. And I get a little cautious when they say that because, logistics in India, I feel is not standard. It's, highly contextual. So at Anva also, we work across transportation, warehousing, primary movement, secondary movement, direct dispatch, so many different verticals. And like every layer has its own operating rhythm, right? You cannot force fit the same tool into all the different verticals and then expect it to work. So I feel the technology has to be flexible enough to kind of understand, what are the differences, but it has to at the same time be simple enough that it can actually be used, right? I think another major one is that a lot of solutions, especially these days that are being pitched, are marketed from the perspective of control, right? You can monitor the ground, you can monitor your driver, you can, you'll have the best visibility, the best footage, but it's not really designed for collaboration. So, it's like, are we trying to monitor the ground or are we trying to empower the ground, right? Because the branch team is not always the problem, the driver is not always the problem, right? They are the system. So if the technology kind of makes them feel like they are being policed and that they are the problem, they will of course resist it. If it makes their lives easier, they will adopt it. So I think this is a very important distinction, right? And especially I think now with AI kind of having its moment, a lot of companies are coming and saying, okay, let's, get this technology and you can replace X number of employees, or get this technology and you don't need an operations executive. But I don't think in logistics, the goal can be to remove human dependency, because in our industry, the human layer is not just a bottleneck, right? It's kind of like a shock observer, I would say, in a way. Because, when something goes wrong, your driver, you may have the best, agentic calling for your driver, but the driver is not going to sit and call and speak to an AI agent. He wants to talk to a good branch manager that he's comfortable with, right? So a experienced traffic person can save the shipment. So I feel, the goal of tech should not be to try to erase people. It is, how do you take the same people and make them more efficient, make them more effective? And I think this is where my journey has kind of also shaped how I look at tech. Because, of course, coming from Wall Street and startups, I understand, there's a lot of appeal to dashboards and automation and AI. But after working here, I've learned that, the best technology is not always the flashiest technology or the most advanced. It's a technology that really can be used when there's a bad day. As I said, can it work when your network is poor? Can it work when your team is overloaded? Can it work when your driver is not tech savvy? So I think, to me, that's the gap between what is being sold and what is being used. Because a lot of tech companies are selling this kind of visibility to the top and control to the top, but they're not creating usability at the bottom. So I think it's not just necessarily about more and more technology. It's just about, having better technology. And I think that's a very core concept we have to understand.
Okay, so I hear you. Like technology needs to be incredibly personalized, incredibly customized, and without losing, that empathy for people on the ground. Like in the sense that instead of acting like as a tool for monitoring or what have you, actually empower them and make them better at their job, right? When it comes to logistics, I mean, it's no secret, it's a very thin margin business. I mean, as I hear again and again, the more I talk to logistic professionals, one thing becomes very, very clear. So, in terms of when it comes to investment in technology, what are those investments which actually move the needle for you guys versus something uh, looks good in a sales pitch but does not really deliver a good ROI, so as to use the finance term, right? So, what do you think are those kind of technological innovations or whatever that really move the needle for you guys?
No, I think first of all, you hit the, hammer right on the head, because it's absolutely a very low margin business. It's now starting to become a business of volume more and more. And we are seeing even more pressures kind of play out right now with the geopolitical situation. So I think in logistics, we don't have the luxury of just adopting technology because it sounds impressive. A tool may look really good in a sales pitch, but if it is not really improving your bottom line or safety, or, making you a better service provider, then it's really not moving the needle or solving any problem, as you said. So we have to really ask ourselves, I think, when we evaluate any new tech, like, where is the money actually leaking? Because, sometimes we feel the leakage will be very dramatic, like theft or accident. But a lot of times it can be, very small inefficiencies that add up, like, say, extra kilometers, or maybe a route planning is not done properly. There's a lot of detention, vehicle utilization is very low. And in a business like ours, I think, where, as we said, the margins are low, these small leaks add up very quickly. So for me, I think the tech that delivers real ROI is not necessarily the most advanced technology. It's a technology that's kind of quietly plugging these leaks slowly, and doing so in a more effortless and user-friendly manner. So I think one area where I genuinely see value is, AI dash cams and driver safety technology. And unfortunately, many transporters are still looking at this as only a safety tool, right? But I feel for fleet operators, it's a great financial protection tool. If there's an accident or a dispute, the video evidence can make a huge difference, because the tendency is always to kind of blame the big vehicle, blame the truck, blame the driver. And sometimes that's not always the case. I've seen incidents for us also where some bikers have come and purposely tried to, hit the truck so that they can get some compensation. So I think in these kind of cases, if you have the actual footage, it helps establish what actually happened. It protects the driver, it protects the company from, false or inflated claims. And then eventually also helps improve driver behavior over time. So I think that's one. Also, I think route optimization is definitely another area, because this is not just about choosing the shortest route. Because the shortest route we all know is not always the best route. There's so many different variables, whether it's toll cost now, even fuel availability, as we were speaking, safety, what is the night driving risk, where can the driver actually stop on the road. So I think route optimization that actually works can really reduce your delays. It can improve your TAT and increase your utilization, because utilization is everything. As I said, for us at Anva especially, we have our 250 trucks of our own. So the cost of each truck is very significant. And if we can get the same asset, the same truck, to do more productive kilometers in a month and kind of pay for this own installments, that directly impacts our profitability. And I think another area maybe that's becoming very important is fuel intelligence, especially now in the context of everything that's going on. And I think in general also, right? Like fuel is one of the biggest cost components in transport. And now, especially with the geopolitical volatility that we are seeing, it's become even more sensitive. We just saw even today there was a price hike. There was a price hike a few days back as well. There's a lot of pressure because of the conflict that's going on, and there's a lot of rise in global crude prices. So for logistics companies like ours, you cannot always pass on that increase very easily to customers, especially because customers themselves are under a lot of cost pressure, and the contracts are structured in a way that it's not easy to do that. So I know that now there's, for instance, there's someone who's working on excellent technology that will help you identify, where is the cheapest or most efficient refueling point if you're doing a long haul trip. So, at different states may have different prices. So where can you refuel the fastest and, the cheapest? And I know it sounds like a very small optimization, but I've worked this out for ourselves. And if you multiply even that few paise or 1 rupee liter across, a large fleet across thousands of kilometers, it becomes meaningful. So I think that's the kind of technology that I find quite interesting and exciting, because it's not abstract, it directly attacks your cost line. And then one thing I'm personally very passionate about, and people don't really talk about it as much, is what is your digital documentation and POD management, right? It's not a very glamorous topic, but in logistics, we are not only working in a very thin margin business, we are very cash flow strapped, right? Because we are dealing with, long billing cycles, especially, many of us that are working with big companies. So your delayed documentation will delay your billing, and then your delayed billing will delay your cash flows. So, if you have a system where your PODs, invoices, your trip closures, everything is properly digitized, there's a huge impact on your working capital, right? Because in a thin margin business like ours, cash flow discipline is very, very important, and it's also the main ROI. So I think at the end of the day, in logistics, we really have to answer one brutal question, right? For any tech, like after you consider the subscription fee, the implementation effort, the training, the resistance, the chaos on the ground, all the variables to actually get that technology running, has it made your business more profitable? And if the answer is no, then it may be, the best and most beautifully designed and most elegant software, but it's not really solved any real problem for you. So I think it's very important to kind of look at it from that lens.
Okay. And when it comes to something that I've noticed, like I've been doing this event for like about a decade now, and there's something that the industry struggles with is the driver facing technology.
Hmm.
So your AI dash cams, driver behavior monitoring systems, in-cab systems. I mean, all logistic companies invest a lot in these technologies, and yet the adoption is painfully slow.
Hmm.
So, why do you think that is? Is that like a trust issue, a training problem, something deeper?
So I think, I mean, as I was mentioning in the previous answer, I'm personally a champion of driver-facing tech. And I'm surprised myself at why it has not caught on as much as it should have, because it's some really great technology that is ultimately creating a win-win ecosystem for drivers, transporters, clients, everyone. But I think I mean, personally, I feel it's a couple of things. Of course, all the things that you mentioned, there's a trust problem, there's a training problem. And then I think there's something deeper also, which is kind of the issue is dignity as well, right? Because a lot of driver facing technology is introduced to drivers as if, they are the problem to be controlled, which we were talking about previously also. You can have the best dash cams and in-cab alerts and, tracking systems and fatigue detection, and from the management side, we see these as safety tools or, okay, this client has asked for this, so we have to comply with it. But from the driver's side, if you think about it, it can feel like, now someone is just watching me all the time. I had this one safe space, which was my cabin, and now, there's going to be cameras there monitoring everything I'm doing. Every mistake I make will be used against me. So it's like the company does not trust me. So I think that is the starting point, and that's what makes adoption difficult, right? Because we have to remember that a driver is spending long hours on the road. He's dealing with fatigue, traffic, very high temperatures as we are seeing right now, poor road conditions, pressure from, the customer, pressure from us, pressure to reach on time. There's a lot of times so much pressure from his own family, and he gets very little recognition. And now we are going and putting a camera inside his cabin and telling him, okay, you happily accept it. That's not really realistic. So I don't think the problem is that drivers don't understand safety. I think the problem is that we don't always communicate safety in a way that feels personal to them. So, when we talk about driver facing tech, I've seen a lot of people just talk about as compliance, like, Abhi, the client is asking for this, so we have to put it, there's no option. But the driver is not going to, appreciate that. We should kind of communicate it to him as something that is going to protect his life. So at Anva, one thing I learned is that, the way you introduce technology sometimes matters more than the technology itself, right? So if you install a dash cam and then we're telling the driver, okay, we are watching you, you've already lost him. He'll find a way around it. He's going to cut the wire. And I don't think there's any tech that can, get around a driver's jugaad. So he's going to find a way around it. So the challenge here is that you have to tell him that, okay, hey, this is for your safety. If something goes wrong, this footage can protect you. If someone falsely blames you, this will be your evidence. If you're tired and the system asks you to take a break, you have the opportunity to take some rest, and then no branch manager or no client can scream at you, because this is a matter of safety. So these systems can actually, protect drivers in many ways. Again, we spoke about accidents earlier, right? The footage can show what really happened. A lot of times the truck drivers are not at fault. Maybe another vehicle cut him suddenly. Maybe there was unsafe behavior from someone else on the road. And, we've seen what happens to truck drivers in these instances. They are beaten up so badly by the locals, sometimes, almost beaten to death. So when you have an AI dash cam, that can be a great defense mechanism. It can be a great evidence. It can also help you get faster assistance. I've seen videos where there was, highway robbery happening. Then the AI dashcam kind of detected that there's someone else in the background. And the driver was immediately like kind of alerted, and the branch manager got alerted. They immediately sent the cops, and the situation was handled. So it can be, almost a life-saving intervention in a lot of cases. I think the second problem is also that, we are just training drivers on how to use the device, not on why it is existing, right? So we also, I mean, I'm also guilty of this, because initially we would also do the same thing. We'll explain, okay, this is the button, this is the alert, this is the app. आप यहाँ पे ये दबाइए, ये press कीजिए, ये message आएगा. But we're not explaining the purpose. We are not even, bothering to sit with the driver and say, okay, this is not being installed to catch you. This is being installed because your life matters. Your family is waiting for you. Because Anva can get another driver, the client can get another Anva, but your family cannot get another you. So this is really about you. So what we started doing is we actually now show footage to drivers of, fatal accidents. And then we also have some interviews with the families who lost, their son or their husband, or, someone who was very close to them in these kind of incidents. So when you see a son talking about how he was waiting for his father and he never came home, then it becomes really personal. Then it makes them feel, okay, this is not just about compliance. This is not about control. This is about my life. And I think that emotional communication is extremely important. And I think, again, this is sadly true that many systems are just designed without understanding the driver's reality. What we spoke about in the previous question, we try to give so much visibility to the top that we end up kind of creating too many alerts, too many like kind of infringement of the driver's privacy. Some apps are so complicated, like I could barely get myself to use them. And too many alerts can really feel very irritating and insulting because the driver is already under a lot of pressure. And when the technology is constantly kind of, spitting out alerts at him, it just adds another layer of stress. So good driver-based technology should not nag the driver. It should support him. There's a big difference between a system that's saying, "Oh, you made a mistake," and a system that's saying, "Please take a break. You might be tired," because one is just creating defensiveness and the other is creating awareness. And even today there are a lot of false positives with these alerts. So we have to be very mindful. So I don't think adoption is slow because drivers are anti-technology. Many drivers today have YouTube channels and they are very popular on Instagram. So I think they are open to technology. I think adoption is slow because we have introduced the technology without trust. So I think the solution is not just how you build better devices, but how do you build better communication? We have to tell the driver why it matters. Be patient when you train him. Data fairly. Don't just penalize the unsafe behavior, but actually reward the safe driving. Don't use every alert as a point to call and scream at the driver. Show real examples to the driver, involve them in the rollout, and really sit and listen when they ask uncomfortable questions. We've had drivers who've asked us, "What if I'm changing? What happens then?" Right? What if this is happening? Can I put a cloth on the camera? So really listen to them because some of their kind of concerns are quite genuine, and make them feel the technology is on their side, because this will only work when the driver stops seeing this technology as kind of this camera that's pointed at him and starts seeing at this co-pilot that's sitting with him, right? Because the goal of all this technology ultimately is to bring the driver home safely.
Sure. I understand, that, anywhere's like, the drivers on the road. And even when we are driving, right? Like, India's anyways actively trying to kill you. Like, there's so many things coming at you and all of that. And, the last thing you want is another thing kind of overwhelming you with all the
Exactly.
information that's coming. Okay, so now we move on to something that we discussed in some of the earlier questions as well, which is that there is a lot of data that is at the disposal of fleet operators, logistics companies today, be it GPS, telematics, load tracking, fuel sensors, like you mentioned, right? But the thing is, a lot of times you also see like a lot of these kind of logistics operations which are being largely run on intuition and WhatsApp, right?
Mm.
So, according to you, what differentiates a truly digital logistics company from one which is digitally equipped on paper?
Oh, interesting. So I think a digitally equipped company, and I think many, transporters, many logistics service providers are already there. Digitally equipped companies have data, but I think a genuinely data-driven company will change decisions because of that data. Because today, as you mentioned, many fleet operators, they have GPS, telematics, fuel sensors, EPODs, tracking, dashboards, like the full stack, and a lot of data points, right? But the question is not like how much data are we capturing. The real question is like, what are we doing differently because of this data? Because if you just have data and that does not change any decision, it's just noise. And I think this is where a lot of logistics companies, including, what we also did at a different stage of our journey, was we have to be honest with ourselves. It's very easy to feel modern because you have a dashboard. But if your branch and your branch team is still making the decision on instinct when you have data points available, if your escalations are kind of still being managed only after the customer calls 5 times, if your vehicle utilization is still poor, then of course you have the best technology and you're very digitally equipped, but only on paper. You're not really data driven. So to me, like a genuinely data driven transport operation requires a lot of discipline, because data quality in logistics is not automatic. It has to be really built into the daily habits and the daily culture of the company. And this is something I know we struggled with at Anva also, because I never thought that, the data entry or the data quality was something that we would have to, kind of work on. But I realized, if your trip time is not updated correctly, if you are sitting and guessing the unloading time later and then inputting it into your TMS just for the sake of completing the entry, if you're entering your vehicle numbers kind of inconsistently across different systems, then of course your dashboard or whatever, your Excel sheet or your TMS will have data, but it will tell the wrong story. So, coming from my background, I was very used to structured data. But I think in logistics, the first, step is not analysis of data. I think the first challenge is data discipline. So before we even talk about, AI or predictive analytics, we have to make sure that the basic data is reliable, it's clean, it's, not stale. So what time did your truck report? What time was it actually loaded? Where did the delay happen? What was the fuel it actually consumed? What was the fuel that you had given the truck? Was the POD received? Was the trip closed? Did the customer billing happen? So these are very, these will sound like very basic data points and they're not very exciting, but that's where, the efficiency is hidden. And the second thing is also decision making, because a data driven company is not just collecting reports and, taking on the data and analyzing it, it's asking better questions like, why is this route consistently taking longer? Like we do a lot of analysis on vehicle mileage and vehicle averages, right? So if you have the same model and the same build and the same year, then why is this vehicle always giving a poor mileage? Is it a repair issue? Is it a maintenance issue? Is it a driver issue? Why is a customer, this particular customer is always causing a lot of detention, especially because we are in secondary transport, we deal with a lot of distributors. So, what is the data that we can take and present to our clients about certain customers? Why is this one particular branch in our company always entering, old data? Why are they always entering data N-1 or N-2 and they're closing trips late? So I think this is when your data becomes useful, because it's not just about reporting and collecting. Now you're going to diagnostics. It's like GPS. Like a lot of people think, okay, GPS should just tell you where your truck is. But no, I think a GPS, you should actually look at the trip history. You should try to understand the delay patterns, right? POD again is a very critical thing. It should not only be confirming the delivery, it should help you build faster. It should help you improve your working capital cycle. So I think the key is that data cannot sit in a report. It has to really enter kind of the operating rhythm of your company. And the third and very important is adoption. And I think this is where, you spoke about WhatsApp and Intuition. And of course, WhatsApp gets a lot of flack. Transporters and logistics providers don't like it, but it's a love-hate relationship. You can't survive without it. So why does WhatsApp work? It's because it's simple, it's so fast, it's familiar, it's mobile based, and everyone, whether it's your driver or your branch team or your customer, everyone is using it. So when you build any technology or buy any technology, you have to respect that. If a system is much more difficult than WhatsApp, people will go back to WhatsApp because their priority is not the tech. Their priority is making sure the shipment reaches on time. So, if you are having a complicated system where, it takes 5 to 10 clicks to do something that a simple WhatsApp voice note or message can do, your adoption will suffer. If the branch team is feeling that this is a lot of extra work and okay, chalo, we'll update this at the end of the day and this is just a compliance thing, otherwise, the management will sit on our head, then your data is stale. And I think that is the gap between, being digitally equipped and being data driven. Because like a digitally equipped company will say, okay, we have a system. But a data driven company will say, is the system being used live? Is it being used in real time at the moment of the action? Because my learning has honestly been that you cannot sit and digitize for the sake of it. It's a very fancy buzzword, but any digitization has to solve some sort of problem. It has to either improve your efficiency, your transparency, your profitability, your customer communication. It has to do something, right? That is when data becomes powerful. And of course, it's very important to have one solid, sacred version of truth, because this sadly happens to a lot of people in logistics. The transporters will get one version of the truth, the drivers will say something, your branch team is saying something, then the client has been given, four different versions of the truth from their team. So it's very important to kind of have, data at that moment that reduces this gap. It avoids that confusion and mistrust. They should make operations more transparent to the customer. the goal is, not just internal reporting, it becomes a way to service the customer. If a customer does not have to call you 5 times and check, where is the shipment, that is the value. If a branch manager can see which trips kind of need to be acted on before they escalate and become a complaint, that's the value. And if a management can really see, what lanes are bleeding me and what, lanes are really, really loss making, that is the value. So, of course, I think there is a human side to it. Intuition is important. WhatsApp is important. And the goal of data is not to replace that. I think the goal is to kind of validate that intuition, right? Because a good traffic manager will know which transporter to trust, will know which market driver is dependable, which customer can delay. So, in my view, WhatsApp is not the enemy. Intuition of your team is not the enemy. The problem is when they remain the only system. So it's not about removing human judgment, but it is how do you use data to give that judgment better visibility, validate that judgment, and then give a structure around that judgment.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for answering that. You just need to allow me like a second because my headphone has conked off, so I just need
No
to
problem.
manage the sound at my end. Just give me a second.
No worries, no worries.
I hope you can still hear me fine.
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope my audio is okay.
Yeah, your audio is perfect. It's just that
Okay.
my headphones conked off, so I was just reducing some of the noise, like air conditioning and like all of that, like
No, no problem.
just toning it down a bit. Uh, so now, moving on to the next question, there's a tendency in all of us to chase trends. Like, when it comes to technology, the latest trend is AI, AI this, AI
Yeah.
that. So when at Anva, like, you're evaluating a new technology, how do you cut through the noise to identify a technology that, okay, this is actually, adding some value, solving a real operational problem versus this is just, like how we were discussing earlier, that this is just adding to the complexity. Will the team like to, use this or adhere to this, or, is actually, working?
So I think this is a very important question, especially right now, and I'm so glad you asked it. Because the logistics industry, at least what I'm seeing, and maybe you know this better, but we are flooded with so many tech solutions, and AI has become just, the buzzword for everyone. Everything is AI. Everyone is selling AI. Everyone is selling automation and, real-time visibility and predictive analytics. And, I genuinely, I believe that technology has a huge role to play in logistics, especially for me, like it's been a massive game changer, being a woman, getting into transport. We have our trucks operating in remote parts of the country. And through technology, I have the confidence to manage it. But I think the danger is when, you kind of use technology because of the trend rather than thinking of it as a tool. So at Anva, like the first question we try to ask ourselves is not, how advanced is this technology? But the first question, what I spoke about earlier also, what problem is this actually solving? And do we need it? Because, we have to realize the industry we are in. Every system has a cost. And I'm not just talking, of course, there's a big subscription cost and implementation cost, but there's also the time cost, the cost of training, the adoption cost, the resistance cost. And, the biggest cost is sometimes the cost of distracting your team from the work that they were already doing. So I think for us at Anva, technology has to earn its place. So whenever we are evaluating any new technology, we try to kind of cut through this noise by asking some practical questions. The first is like, who is the real user? So we spoke about this a little bit, but all the technology is sold to management, but the ground team is the one who's actually using it. So, we may get very impressed by a demo and feel, oh, wow, like, oh, it has this plugin to Claude or, Codex. But will the ground user actually find it useful? Like, will it make their work easier or will it make their work harder? Will it reduce their calls or kind of increase the burden on them? Are they a big thing? And I've realized this the hard way again is, are they going to update in real time or they're just going to sit at the end of the day and, update it for the sake of doing it? Will they understand why it matters? Or and will they use it under pressure? Because I've seen at times of monthly closing, I've had the best software that we kind of piloted, but people are like, no, we have to dispatch X number of trucks that are 2 times more than usual. So we cannot, use the software right now. So the user on the ground, if he does not adopt it, then this technology is not going to work, because no matter how good that software or dashboard looks, it's just not going to happen. The second question, we also spoke about this, is what is the bottom line impact? We cannot just use technology because it's nice to have or it's beautiful. It has to serve some purpose. Either it has to reduce your cost, it has to improve your utilization, it has to reduce your risk, it has to, do something. If we cannot clearly connect technology to an actual, tangible outcome, then we really need to like pause and reflect. I also think, what decision, we spoke about this previously, like what decision will this technology help me make better? And this is something I am personally very passionate about, is, because data is only useful if it changes or helps you make a decision. If a system is giving you the best and most accurate, real-time location, but your team is not even using that system and they're still calling the driver manually, then there's no point of it. If you have a beautiful dashboard that's showing you all the delay patterns, are we changing the routes? Are we communicating with the clients? Are we changing anything in our allocation? What are we actually acting on this? You may have AIs, like now the AI dash cams or AI, enabled software that gives you so many alerts. But I've seen so many companies where these alerts are just notifications and nothing is being done, right? So then what is the point? Because without that action layer, your technology is just becoming passive. It's showing you the problem, but it will not help you solve it. So another very fundamental thing is like, are we just trying to digitize a good process, or we are just trying to digitize a broken process? Because a lot of companies, we'll just rush to digitize everything. Okay, let's make this tech driven, let's digitize this, but we are not fixing any underlying process. Sometimes our process, and I have also realized this at Anba, when we try to implement a new TMS or when we're implementing any new technology and we think about our own process, a lot of times we find out, okay, our own process has so many flaws in it. There's so much confusion. And in that case, technology will only digitize that confusion. So if your trip closure, for instance, is not disciplined, your technology cannot fix it. If you have a lot of alerts, but you don't have a proper escalation matrix of handling the alerts, there's no ownership, then it will not solve anything. So I think we really have to ask before implementing any technology is, do we have the process discipline to make it work? And technology should always simplify complexity. It cannot decorate it. So one thing I personally believe very strongly about is that we should always pilot any technology before scaling it. Instead of you just getting a tool and then rolling out the tool, organization wide, let's test it in one branch, one lane, one operation, one process, and then kind of observe, right? Like actually speak to the people who are using it, not just, the senior team, or not just, the people who are in charge of tech. Actually ask the ground users, whether it's the drivers, your branch executives, your warehouse team, your accounts team, and just stay curious. Stay curious, but we have to stay disciplined. So I think it's a very balancing act between kind of staying open to new ideas, and we have to, because there's some fabulous technology out there now, but we cannot be distracted by every trend. So I think we have to be very clear that technology has to serve operations, and not the other way around, where you kind of force fit technology into your operations just because you want to have the best tech stack or the best and latest technology.
Okay. And so, now I'm going to talk about something you spoke about earlier as well, but something that's, often overlooked, which is, fleet network design and route planning as a lever. Before, one brings in a transport management system or any visibility tool, how much of logistics efficiency is determined by decisions such as, your hub locations, your route structures, your fleet mix? And how do you guys think about this?
And that is a very underrated question. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because, very often when we think about improving efficiency, we immediately think about technology, GPS, TMS, control towers. And of course, all of that has a lot of value. But I think before you optimize, the technology, we have to ask ourselves, like, is our network itself, designed intelligently? Is it well designed? Because as you were speaking about earlier, a great TMS will just make a bad plan more visible. It cannot help you execute. It will just kind of highlight the gaps. So it cannot compensate for, a badly designed network. And I think a lot of, efficiency in logistics, you kind of already decided before the truck is even moving. The planning is very critical here. So, it's decided by where is your hub? What time did you dispatch the vehicle? What type of vehicle did you use? How is the route? How many drops are there? Are the delivery windows realistic? Can you reuse the vehicle very efficiently? So for us at Anva Logistics, this is even more critical because, as I mentioned, we also do a lot of secondary movement. And secondary transport is very different from, the long haul primary movement because it's a lot more, I would say, granular. It's more time sensitive, and it's very vulnerable to local realities. Like, no entry restrictions are a big thing. What time is the distributor open? Unloading delays because sometimes there's no labor available at the unloading point of distributors, congestion because actually the kilometers are very few, but there can be massive congestion and traffic when you're moving inside the city. What is the accessibility? Because many cities and many villages, like they have some entry restrictions for vehicles. So something as simple as just what time did you dispatch your truck can completely change the kind of trip economics. So, we've had this, if a vehicle has a particular slot and it's left 30 or 40 minutes later and it reaches your city after the no entry begins, then it's just stuck waiting for hours. So, a trip that was maybe just like 3 or 4 hours from your warehouse to the customer point now goes into multiple hours or multiple days, even, right? And it's very frustrating for everyone, the driver, the customer, the end client, the branch team. So on paper, your route is the same, your distance is the same, but operationally, your entire trip has kind of changed. The driver's waiting, the vehicle turnaround is delayed, your next trip is impacted, and your cost of delivery for that particular trip has significantly gone up. So I think that's why, this is not just a scheduling thing. This is a major, cost variable. The second one, as you mentioned, fleet mix, right? We always have a tendency to think, okay, let's get bigger and bigger vehicles. Let's reduce, all procurement teams have a favorite word, which is let's optimize your cost per ton. But I mean, I personally think that is not always the solution. A larger vehicle, of course, it looks more cost efficient. But, if it cannot even enter certain points, there's challenges with clubbing, when you try to combine multiple loads, it'll reduce your, efficiency. It'll create other sorts of challenges. So sometimes when you have a smaller vehicle, but you can turn it around faster, it can be more practical than kind of having a larger vehicle just to kind of optimize that CPT number. So I think that's very important. And again, in primary transport, what is the return or reverse logistics mechanism? How are you utilizing your fleet? Because all of us in the logistics industry are now struggling with, the increasing input costs of everything, especially, trucks are getting massively expensive. There's new technology coming in trucks day by day. So if you're not able to utilize that asset properly, and we all have installments to pay, then the company is not going to survive. So the real question is, how are you kind of optimizing the vehicle's utilization? What happens after delivery? Is your vehicle coming back empty? Can you deploy it somewhere? Can you advance plan the reverse movement? Can you design some routes that improve your utilization? So I think this is a very important thing. And of course, customer behavior, I was talking about this earlier. It's very important because if the customer is detaining your vehicle, again, that has a direct impact on your bottom line. Some locations are going to unload very fast. Some customers, they'll always delay vehicles. Some will have very strict windows of when they can unload. Some you have to just repeatedly keep following up with. And if you don't plan for these contingencies and you operate in this kind of perfect scenario, then your technology is just going to flag your delays. It's not going to solve them. So I think the most important decisions in logistics is often like made before the dispatch. And so I think that visibility is very important, but that visibility comes only after your design. If your network is poorly designed, technology will just kind of magnify that inefficiency. So a good TMS or tech will not help you execute better, but I really feel like a good network and a good design and proper planning will help you kind of be in a much better place before your execution even starts. So I think this is a very underrated and important concept that we should understand.
That makes a lot of sense. And now we move on to vehicle uptime. So vehicle uptime is probably the most important thing when it comes to road transport. A truck that's not moving, it's just not, it's not like it's just losing money, but it's also breaking, customer commitments. So when it comes to technology, what are some of these technologies that have maybe helped in predictive maintenance, in reducing these kind of unplanned downtime, or you feel that that tech is still some time away for us?
So I think vehicle uptime is a very, very important, variable in road transport. And I think we often really underestimate how expensive downtime is. And I've seen this with everyone, be like, okay, it's a truck, the breakdown will happen, repair has to be done. It's a part and parcel. And of course, that is true. But when a truck is idle, it's not just that the vehicle is not earning or the installment will not be met. It's the fact that, your driver is waiting, and there is already a shortage of drivers these days, as we all know. Your customer commitment is at risk. Your next trip is affected. You have to find a replacement vehicle, which might come at a higher cost. Everyone is just firefighting. So downtime is not one cost. There's a massive chain reaction. So for me, uptime, it's not just about a maintenance metric it's actually a service metric. Actually a profitability metric. So this is where I think technology is genuinely is helping in a lot of ways. Earlier a lot of maintenance was reactive. Like even when I joined, there would be a breakdown on the vehicle, the driver is calling your repair team, the team is trying to identify the issue. If the vehicle is under AMC, you send it to the service center or you try to arrange a mechanic, you're trying to figure out the spare parts. You're then informing the customer is furious, and then the damage is already done. Especially we work in e-commerce, and in e-commerce, it's almost as if like the vehicle has to be repaired while it is moving because of the kind of tats that we have. So this was very reactive, and I think this is where technology is now kind of helping. Now you have telematics, you have sensors, you have fuel data, tire data, so many vehicle health alerts. So you can kind of identify the problem before it becomes bigger. If there's some battery issue or engine overheating, or a lot of times, harsh driving. Tire pressure is a big one because, tires, especially in the heat right now, just, kind of exploding on the way. So a lot of these things, instead of waiting for that breakdown on the highway, if you just do preventative maintenance and you bring in your vehicle at the right time and address the issue earlier, it saves you a lot of time, it saves you a lot of cost. And that small alert, if you handle today, can prevent some major accident or breakdown tomorrow. And especially for an asset heavy business model like we have at Anva, where we primarily own the majority of our trucks, this really matters because every vehicle has to earn, every vehicle has to pay its installment. So the vehicle is just stuck and standing unexpectedly for months. The cost is not just the repair bill, it's just the lost utilization of it. And I think another interesting thing that's happened is, now, of course, we have BS6 vehicles, more advanced technology. And because there's now onboard diagnostics and, stricter emissions, many of these vehicles, they are being diagnosed to computer-based systems. So today, and I had a chance to go to the workshop and see this myself. It was quite fascinating. Or sometimes, even on the road, when I get these videos, the repair person actually comes with a laptop, the technician, and he can just connect his equipment. He'll read the fault codes and identify the issue more quickly. So it's not even like he has to physically go and check what is wrong with the truck. And I think this can reduce a lot of, guesswork and speed up the repair. So I feel technology is not only just, first it's helping us predict issues before the failure happens. Second, it's kind of helping us diagnose the issues faster, like I mentioned with, the onboard diagnostics and all of these new technologies that are available. And third, it helps us plan the maintenance because for us, when you deal with clients, and I think all clients have their monthly closing time or, their peak sales time. And if your vehicle breaks down during that time, of course, the client is going to be upset. So how can we kind of service our vehicles during lean periods, during low impact windows, so they don't break down during a critical trip? And of course, driver behavior. I think that's a big one because so many maintenance issues are linked to, how is a driver driving your vehicle? Whether is he braking very harshly? Is he over speeding? Is there sudden acceleration? They have a huge impact on vehicle health. So when we use this data properly, it becomes about safety as well. And it's also about the asset life. So that's why I said it's a win-win situation. If you have a driver who's driving safely, he's protecting his life, the customer is happy because their safety metrics are met, and as a logistics provider we are happy because kind of it helps the whole ecosystem be more safer and it helps your assets survive longer. So I feel a good driver can really protect your vehicle because a poorly driven vehicle, will age faster, it will, suck more fuel, it will need more repairs. So of course, I think there's a lot of great things that technology is doing, but there are certain, limits as well. Right? Technology will warn you, but it cannot bring that maintenance discipline. Again, we spoke about this. If you're getting a bunch of alerts, but no one in your team is responding to them, then there's no purpose. If and I've been seeing this a lot right now, is if your vehicle is going to the workshop, but the workshop doesn't have the spare parts available, you may have the most fanciest and most accurate diagnostics tech, but the vehicle is not getting repaired. If the driver is not reporting any symptoms, the system will catch some things, but it will not catch everything. A lot of organizations like look at repair and maintenance as like a back office, cost center, you know, it will not solve that mindset problem. We have to have the discipline to work on the predictions. And not every prediction and not every breakdown is predictable. There's poor road conditions. I was talking about tire bursts. The weather has, of course, been not in our favor this particular summer, and mechanical failures can happen. So technology can reduce some of that uncertainty, but it will not eliminate it. Also, just because your vehicles are more advanced and more complex, like we were talking about, the onboard diagnostics and everything, it doesn't mean that your technicians are also more advanced. So I think I've seen this sometimes. We have the some technicians who don't even know how to properly diagnose things. There's still certain genuine parts are not available. So the technology in the vehicle has improved, but that whole ecosystem of technicians and actual spare parts around the vehicle, that has not kept up. So I think that's where a little bit of the limitation is there. But I do feel that, with time, a lot of this is going to be solved. And I think it's very important that we don't look at maintenance as a back office kind of repair function. It is a very important strategic function that can directly impact your profitability.
And now we move on to the last question. So when it comes to customer expectations, so over the next 5-10 years, how do you see customer expectations reshaping logistics, and what does it mean for someone like who's building such a company, a future ready company? So what does that mean for you?
So I have a very interesting take on this question, and I think all logistic providers do because this is the biggest question that everyone's asking. That people have come up to me and said, okay, everyone is constantly complaining about how bad logistics is as an industry. The margins are so poor. Drivers are creating a shortage. So why are you in it, right? So I think I personally feel like I'm an optimist, but I feel the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to be very defining for logistics as a sector. Because, for a long time, and I've seen this, I've spoken to my dad, and I've had the privilege of speaking to some, legendary transporters and very experienced logistics service providers who've told me that, they've been made to deliver more and more. Of course, we all know the reality. The freight has stayed the same, but customers have increased their expectations. They want better visibility. They want better tech. They want faster response. They want lower damage, lower shortage. They want excellent compliance. They want more accountability. And I think all of that is, of course, fair from the customer viewpoint. But the challenge is, there's the commercials for the transporters, for the LSPs have not moved in the same direction. So the industry overall is under a lot of pressure. Of course, fuel costs, we spoke about this, have gone up now recently. Driver shortage is a very real issue that we are all struggling with. Compliance costs have increased. The cost of vehicles have gone up. AdBlue costs have increased. There's the cost of technology. There's a lot of working capital pressure, insurance, maintenance. everything really adds up and kind of chokes your bandwidth. So freight rates, on the other hand, are remaining stuck. So, you're kind of in the situation where, okay, your revenue is stagnant, but your costs have increased. So there's, a very thin margin, or I know there are a lot of transporters who are even doing sometimes have to do loss-making trips. So the industry is really, feeling the brunt of it. And I don't think this mismatch can continue forever. It is not sustainable. So I feel that we are at a very important transition point, and I think how the customer expectations shape up is going to play a very crucial role, right? And I think I've already started to see this, which is why I'm a bit more optimistic, because now customers, they no longer consider transport just as a commodity service. Earlier it was a pure rate negotiation. Who is the L1, who is giving me the lowest rate, who will place the truck today. But now I think customers are also becoming more sophisticated. They're understanding, that it's not just about the lowest cost provider, because that unreliability can become more costly for them and they have to get the vehicle from the market or when they lose a sale. So they want transparency now. They want predictable service. They want the safety. They want the compliance. They want the problem solving. They want professional communication. Of course, I mean, cost efficiency is still there. We're not in an idealistic scenario, but increasingly, they also want more reliability. And I think this is a major shift. Another shift I'm seeing that, unfortunately, I feel it'll become harder for very small, unorganized operators. And the majority of our industry right now is very fragmented and very disorganized. So, you have a lot of these players who do not have scale, who do not have systems, who don't even have financial discipline. And this is not because, small transporters don't have capability. I've had the opportunity to meet many small transporters, and in fact, some of them are so much sharper and more hardworking than your bigger players. But it's just that the expectations are changing. Like customers want data. They want GST compliance. They want all drivers on PF, ESIC. They want documentation discipline, safety standards, reporting, sustainability conversations. They want you to integrate with their systems. So all of this requires investment. And for a small transporter who doesn't have the economies of scale, how will they absorb these costs when the margins are so thin? So I do think some consolidation will happen. It's already starting to happen. And I mean, I don't necessarily mean this is, big companies will go and buy out small companies. That could be one aspect of it. But I think there's also going to be a lot of networks forming, partnerships. We've already seen these with many fleet operators attaching vehicles to themselves. Regional specialists will kind of work together and there'll be more organized collaboration. So I think collaboration will play a very important role because, for too long, transporters have just been undercutting each other on price. There was a lot of fear in the industry. No one wanted to share their rates. And I think things are changing because it was someone will cut 500 rupees and someone is coming and cutting 1,000 rupees. And then ultimately everyone's margins are suffering. But this cannot be the future just about, let's undercut each other. And now I'm seeing that the industry is also changing. There's so many more educated, informed, and professional players who are now entering the space. And they really understand that, if we keep fighting amongst ourselves, if the industry keeps doing this and, kind of cutting on costs, nobody will survive. So I really hope, and I think I'm starting to see this is more, logistics partners will work together, not just compete against each other. They'll work together not just to optimize costs, but to provide better service, to have a wider network, to have more reliability, to, enforce better tech, and then ultimately do push for like healthier and more sustainable margins. And I also think there's a big shift, that will back this is what customers expect from their logistics partners. So I think, in our recent few years, I've started seeing a lot of customers actually have, I was talking about this, one of our clients was also having a meet for all the transporters. So they have really started to see the value in, really speaking to the transporters and not just kind of negotiating on rates with them. I think earlier we had some customers who, only wanted to work with either very small players or they wanted to work with the large, listed or national players. But now they're realizing that, bigger is not always better in every operation. Of course, a lot of power to large players. They bring incredible scale, they'll bring systems, they'll bring you their brand comfort. But sometimes, we operate in India, right? And there's so many factors at play. So customers need flexibility, they need speed, they need ownership. And sometimes these large companies have very strict SOPs. So they want to work with someone who can also bend beyond conventional SOPs when the situation demands it. because not every problem can be solved, just by raising a ticket. Sometimes, you need that branch manager who has a lot of jugaad. You need that entrepreneur who will pick up the phone, he'll call the driver, he'll speak to the warehouse, he'll speak to the authorities, he'll find some workaround and make the shipment move. So I think mid-size operators have a very interesting opportunity here. So I feel like the future really belongs to these mid-sized and, sort of larger size logistics companies who are willing to scale. Company that has the operational intelligence, it has the local knowledge and the hunger of a traditional transporter, but then it's also trying to build the systems and the tech mindset and professionalism of a larger organization. So I think that combination is going to be extremely powerful, because customers, they don't just want a vendor anymore. They want a partner, who can give them visibility like a large company, but they want the ownership like an entrepreneur. So at Anva, I think that is a space we are personally trying to build for. We do not want to lose our drive, our ground intelligence, our practical problem solving, because that's what built the company. But if we do not build our system stronger, we do not have better data, better safety practices, better, communication, more professionalization, then we will not survive and be ready for the future. So the goal is not to just corporatize in a way that, we lose our agility. The goal is how do we become more scalable without slowing down? Because customers are expecting transporters to now come up with ideas, not just trucks. Like even when we participate in RFQs that would purely be about price, now customers will ask us, okay, do you think you will get vehicles from the market? What kind of vehicles do you think you can get? What fleet mix do you think will work here? Do you think we'll be able to find labor here? So will this lane be efficient or not? What time do you think we should dispatch? So they are valuing this kind of ground intelligence that transporters have. And transport companies will have to become more consultative, right? And I think coming from, having done some consulting myself, I think I naturally look at business from both numbers and customer experience. But logistics has really taught me that you have to have that insight be grounded in some operations. You cannot sit with a spreadsheet and then advise the customer, right? Because that customer could have easily gone to a McKinsey or BCG or Bain, right? They have come to you because you have the practical knowledge to explain to them. You can understand and explain the road economics. You can understand the customer's internal pressure. So, as I said, when I look at the future, and a lot of young gen entrepreneurs also ask me this, and I sometimes ask myself this as well, like, what am I doing here? What are we all doing here? But I do feel I'm optimistic, but I'm not blindly optimistic. It's going to be a very uncomfortable transition for all of us. Margins will remain under pressure. Technology, we'll have to invest in it. Smaller players will have to adapt. Mid-sized players will have to scale. Larger players will have to become more agile. Customers will demand more and more. But I think in a way, this will force the industry to mature because, as I said, logistics is the lifeline of the country. So it's an industry that's here to stay. And I think being pushed to kind of mature and evolve, that will be a good thing for us. So, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed on that front.
So with that, we've come to an end, and I thank you so much for taking out the time to, speak to us. I for one, have learned and picked up new things in our conversation, and and I feel that the logistics industry and road transport industry is in good hands with people such as yourself. Like you're very intelligent, you're quite articulate, and you're not just somebody who's selling a vision. You're actually talking about things which actually what it actually takes to make things work on the ground, right? And the big takeaway for me is that technology is not just like a silver bullet for the logistics industry. It's the right processes, the right culture, like you mentioned, the right communication, and the right tools, like in that order. And the companies that figure that out are going to be the ones that are going to pull ahead. So thank you for joining us today at CV Talks. I hope this is going to resonate with a lot of people like it has with me. And with that, it's a wrap on episode 4 of CV Talks. And if you liked what you heard in this conversation, there's going to be plenty more at the 10th edition of our CVF event on 10th of June at the Conrad in Pune, where we have the strongest lineup yet, and many more such intelligent people across commercial vehicles, logistics, fleet operators, suppliers, and more. So you can head on to cvforum.in for all the details, and my team will also share links in the description. And I look forward to seeing you all there. And Nikita, if you have anything to say.
No, first of all, thank you so much, Rohit, again for having me on CV Talks. Thank you so much to your entire wonderful team that I know goes above and beyond to make this happen. And I genuinely really enjoyed the conversation. And I think the questions you asked were so intelligent and so insightful and so relevant. And I think it really made me think also about how the industry is shaping up. And of course, CVF is, the landmark event for our industry. It's really the best platform for all the thought leaders to come together. So again, thank you so much for organizing this, and for anyone who's listening to this or watching it, please do come to CVF, because I think it will be a truly transformative and excellent time for you to be there. So thank you so much, Rohit, and thank you to the team.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you so much for the shout out, and thank you for taking out the time today.